This is absolutely not a video I ever thought in a million years that I would be making.
You need to be locked in prison for a very long time. You need the internet taken away from you. You are a danger to society.
Because you know I'm the first person to apologize and own up to my mistakes. I have had an insane, crazy past, and all the stuff that I said I will be sorry for until the day I die.
In 2019, a 20-year-old James Charles faced one of the most destructive cancellation campaigns ever seen on YouTube. Tati Westbrook, his mentor and friend who was very much respected by the community they both belonged, released a scathing 40-minute expose on James citing inappropriate behavior and betrayal. It was the catalyst for a mass exodus of followers, intense scrutiny by millions, and also led to many allegations of serious misconduct. This final charge was perpetuated by no other than Jeffree Star, a man who James also saw as a friend, and what's more, who was also now a regiment of the beauty community, although as we found in part 1, he was close to being shunned indefinitely. So before we investigate the terrible events of May 2019, we have to begin where we left off. Towards the end of 2017, Jeffree was fighting with his past demons, and in all, he had 2 long years of controversy boiling up to one climactic event. What we found in part 1 was that Jeffree's character had never changed, and the only difference was in how he presented himself rather than behaved. His lackluster apology left many still scrutinizing his character and questioning the morality of supporting him, as discovered by Kim K, who copped flack for doing so. But of course, he found his footing yet again, and towards the end of 2018, he burst into the YouTube spotlight. This is where the relationship with Shane Dawson became beneficial, as Shane was building himself up as one of YouTube's golden children. His transition to vlogs and conspiracy theories had proven very successful, and he had also managed to redeem himself for his past attempts at comedy. Unlike Jeffree, he didn't attract controversy, and in all, he was surprisingly unproblematic. For this reason, it would be wise for someone seeking a better reputation to associate with him, and this would happen in late 2018. Then afterwards, everything changed for Jeffree. So join me as we continue our investigation into Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson. To begin, we start with Shane and how he fits into this piece of the puzzle. As discussed in part 1, Shane was someone who loved creating videos and was an aspiring director. Unfortunately for him, the latter wasn't something he found much success in doing, but his YouTube career was a different story. After the turbulence of his early comedy, he leveled out and created more socially acceptable content, which drove him into the sub boxes of millions. With this dream of being a director still in the back of his mind, when the opportunity to explore this arose, he leapt right at it, which resulted in Shane finding a new identity. It all began with another creator's spectacular fail, and for that, we will take a look at the extraordinary cock-up of Tana Con. Tana Mojo, the blonde girl synonymous with not being the sharpest tool in the shed, the girl at the center of one of iDubbbz's most outstanding content cops, and more importantly, a YouTuber with over 5.4 million subscribers. In April of 2018, she released a video discussing why she wouldn't be attending VidCon that year and explained the key issues she has with it. The main convention is in Los Angeles at the Anaheim Convention Center. For the larger creators who feature at the event, they receive a special pass that allows them to move around without being mobbed by hundreds of screaming teenagers. So it's essential they have this protection, otherwise they shouldn't attend at all. In 2016, this exact thing happened, as they didn't choose Tana as a featured creator, yet she decided to attend. which caused issues.
And the lineup gets dropped and I'm not on it and I'm not a featured creator. My fans are super bummed. I'm super bummed as well. I'm super confused, but I'd still never been to a VidCon and I'm still looking at it with the mindset of like, who fucking cares? Security comes out, they grab me by my arm and they pull us into this room and they're like, listen, this is a safety hazard. You can't do this, whatever. Hey Tana, hundreds and hundreds of people are here to meet you, but we didn't think you were good enough, so we didn't give you this badge. You can't have a meet and greet here. We don't care if your fans are upset. And so I'm like, so what do you want me to do? And they're like, get the fuck off the premises, go back to your hotel.
The following year, Tana featured in season 2 of the YouTube Red series Escape the Night, which is one of the featured events at VidCon 2017, including panels and activities. For some reason, she was not granted a pass until halfway through the event as the organizers realized their mistake. She argued that their use of her image as a way of promoting these events should have allowed her to be able to access her fans attending the convention.
We call VidCon so angry saying, hey, if you're gonna plaster my face all over this event and you're gonna give every single other person on that billboard, you're gonna give every single other person in the Escape the Night show a featured creator pass, if you're going to sell hundreds and hundreds of tickets to watch a premiere of a show that I'm in to people, why can't you give me a stupid fucking plastic badge so that this year isn't hell like last year's hell that you put me through?
In response to this, she decided that she was going to do her own thing, a meet and greet of epic proportions that would be bigger, better, and freer. The build-up to Tana Con began on Twitter with an announcement of the dates for her event to be June 22 and 23. In minutes, thousands of free tickets were claimed, and Tana went on about how this event was free and not taking hundreds of dollars from fans unlike other greedy conventions. She also released a list of creators that were set to feature at her event, and in all honesty, I can only recognize like 3 people on this list. But later, our friend Shane would be added, and his attendance will be despite being one of VidCon's earliest mainstays. In a note on Twitter, he said he was going to support his friend and saying he was like a proud dad. Days before the event, things were starting to look shaky. But Tana was adamant the event with more than 80 large creators would go ahead without a fuss.
Anything wrong or bad or whatever, if there's bad security, it's me, it's on my fucking face,
yeah,
you know?
Your name is the conference.
Literally, so I mean, I have been putting my heart and soul into making it as perfect as you can for a Tana Mojo.
I wonder what could go wrong.
Why did it fail? Why did Tana Con go so bad?
Well, she expected about 5,000 people to show up. 20,000 people showed up, and it got shut down today.
Police report issued that same day says there was 4 to 5,000 people there at max.
To summarize, Tana Con was a failure. They organized an event that sold 5,000 tickets in a location that could fit just more than 3,000. They advertised it as free, featuring some of the biggest creators, and held it on the same day as VidCon just down the road. They cancelled the event after the first day because they claimed that up to 15,000 non-ticketed people were left outside on a sunny 29-degree day, which led to health issues and general safety problems. It was then revealed by the authorities that the numbers were much lower than that, resulting in a PR nightmare. Tana, being the key scapegoat, was in a lot of trouble and had no real way out of it. But that was resolved when Shane decided to begin an investigation into Tana Con to find out what happened and why it did.
And I think the main reason I want to really figure this shit out is because I'm mad. I'm mad that all of these people that paid money were lied to, but more importantly, they were disappointed and they thought they were gonna have a really fun, awesome time. Tana made this whole video about, oh, this is gonna be better than VidCon, it's gonna be so much fun, this is for you guys, and like, it was fucking worse than VidCon.
This was a shift in style for Shane, and was essentially a pilot for what would be a successful venture for him and his channel. The Tana series did very well in establishing context, with a good amount of background being put into the first video for the viewer to understand the complexity of the catastrophic day. He then managed to tell both sides by interviewing Michael Weist in the second video. learning his side and also revealing his inexperience with planning an event of this scale. The third video was ultimately the climax of the series. He put them both together over video call and they hashed it out in what was very good drama for the camera. Although it does go without saying that one side is villainized a lot more than the other, and Tana is portrayed in a way suggesting she was used by Michael. This is of course in part due to the fact that Shane is very close to her, and he was really only able to make these videos because he had that relationship. In all, the Tana Con series' instant success set Shane up to continue this type of content, which would eventually lead to his latest series with Jeffree Star.
We're 22 minutes in and we don't have any answers.
I muted it.
It's just so embarrassing. This is so annoying!
There's nothing more cliche than watching two white men create an entire infomercial series to showcase to the world how much money they can make by embracing capitalism. The Beautiful World of Jeffree Star series was nothing but a glorified advertisement to hype up their brand new makeup release. A moneymaker that evidently worked very well. But it also capitalized on the suffering of a young man to sell as a dramatic component to the story. However, we'll get to that a bit later. But before all of this, Shane would supposedly investigate Jeffree Star to find out who the man behind the makeup really is. And to put it lightly, he didn't find anything at all. Let's keep this short. Shane created a 5-episode series that would investigate the world of Jeffree Star, the world that no one has truly seen. This was of course almost a year after the events of 2017, which really caused a stir in the beauty scene. The first 4 episodes basically explore Jeffree's lavish life, his past career, and his current business ventures. In a nutshell, it's basically profiling what Jeffree does and how he lives his life. It's a pretty soft tale of what it's like to be rich and famous, and how he got there. It's not really until the final episode that anything worthy of actual analysis is presented.
Some of the things that have happened in the past as like a reason for it, right? Like,
yes.
Oh, it's karma. Oh, you said this or you did that. Because he did that for me too.
Of course.
With you, okay. Let's just jump into it.
Okay.
Okay, so racism.
Yeah.
What do people think you did that's makes you racist?
This part of the series is the single most interesting in terms of understanding Jeffree and his mentality, but also the way in which this series is trying to present him. They go to the house he used to rent back in his MySpace days and talk about what it was like. It then turns into a discussion about the controversial side of Jeffree, and they talk about the things he has been accused of, specifically the claims he is racist.
Now, what I've never said before, because I feel like if you try to defend something like racism or saying something really awful, it just doesn't ever work out. Yeah. But if you go and find the footage, the people I'm screaming at are Caucasian. Yeah, what I said was racist. Yeah. But I wasn't saying it to a person of color. I was saying a horrible, offensive word to cut back at someone calling me something awful. Right. So it's not about race, it's not about any of that. It was just about being an offensive, attention-seeking, angry person.
Take his justification as you will. I don't understand why he would give a reason for using the language, but whatever floats his boat. Jeffree is never truly wrong. What does stand out is how quickly this section was brushed past. As we saw in part 1, there were numerous things Jeffree had done that were very controversial, but the focus on this one minute detail is quite fascinating. Shane also downplayed the concern people had, and then also likened it to his own past.
I relate to it because I feel like there's this weird thing with you where the universe kind of likes to fuck with you. A lot of people use some of the things that have happened in the past as like a reason for it, right? Like, yes. Oh, it's karma. Oh, you said this or you did that. Because he did that for me too.
We can analyze the editing and how these videos are produced all day, how music elicits emotion during certain scenes, and how the theatrics of Shane can dictate the mood that's meant to be felt. But the one thing more crucial than painting a picture is the information you include. It's clear this series was designed to make Jeffree look better, as this exploration of Jeffree's behavior was so incomplete and ended with Shane running a monologue of why he thinks Jeffree behaves the way he does.
I feel like, I mean, I've seen a lot of the drama videos about you, like, oh, Jeffree said this about this person, did this about this person, oh, his friend, his ex-friend, whatever. And I see a lot of people, oh, he's a monster, he's this, he's that. And I see through that because I see a lot of you and me and each other. We have a lot of weird things in common. Yeah. I see it as like, oh, you're hurt, and he's hiding it behind this like queen persona. Yeah. It's almost like when I see the petty tweets or the petty Instagrams or whatever the fuck, I'm always just like, oh, This is like pain.
At the end of the day, this series was more of a spectacle than an actual documentary, and the lack of balance of the story kind of just eliminates the authenticity of what they say. If you're going to question someone, you should always try to reach the other side to see what they have to say. It's not like this is an impossible feat either. Shane has such a big profile that he can reach literally anyone. Whether this omission is out of laziness or tactic, the end result is the same, and it's a very big problem at this level of influence. The glaring issue with Shane's documentaries is the effect they have on the audience that watches them, and the overall perceived image they create about a controversial creator. If you look at the topics of his documentary-style videos, they're all people with a controversial history, yet they're also somewhat connected to Shane through his social groups and location. Now, it's very hard to not have a bias when you're producing content. Every decision you make is an act of inherent bias, but Shane's demeanor and relationships with these people influence portrayal that sees the main subject receive a positive representation. It's this representation that then influences the response from the audience, and keep in mind a lot of them don't understand the full extent of why these people are controversial, so in the long run, the average viewer will not hold each of these people accountable. This puts the burden on Shane because he's not a good investigator. He's not a strong character when it comes to being able to confront people and ask them the hard questions. He comforts them and makes them feel better about the issue rather than making them think about it. So really, his documentaries are just long, drawn-out collaborations rather than critical investigations into the inner workings of some of the largest creators. And that's a big problem. Whether or not he intends to manipulate the audience is a different issue, and it's beside the point because these positive representations do indeed influence positive response. If a commentary YouTuber was to do the same thing, there would be a completely different representation of the subject, and it's not always going to be a negative representation because the main purpose of commentary is to promote positive change in thinking. The part that people hook onto is the purpose of achieving accountability, and that's often misconstrued with negativity. But holding those with influence accountable is positive not only for them, but for the future of the platform and their audiences. It doesn't help that this type of angle rarely reaches a mainstream audience, but D'Angelo Wallace managed to achieve this with his own 3-part series, and that propelled the idea of accountability into the mainstream YouTube viewer base. There is less manipulation of the audience with D'Angelo's investigation, and by holding Shane, Jeffree, and Tati accountable, it achieved a positive outcome for the community. Eugenia Cooney is arguably the best example of Shane's inability as a documentarian, and emphasizes just how dangerous and reckless his drawn-out collaborations can be. Eugenia is well known for the basis of her illness, and many times the controversy surrounding her is the deterioration of her health without action by those around her. Shane made one video with her, an hour-long piece describing the return of Eugenia to the internet after her supposed recovery. However, as good and happy the story was, it was missing vital information and balance that would have completely turned the story on its head. One such side is the group of friends that were referred to as bullies in the video who, after watching, took to YouTube with a candid response to what they had just watched. What they had to say completely shifts the perception of Shane's video, and sadly, it only had a fraction of the views than what his did.
This entire video feels it's a beautiful story, but I still feel fear very much for Eugenia. There's a lot more to the story and to the situation. You know, they glossed over some things that are extremely important in Eugenia's real recovery.
What they were named bullies for was in reference to what they did to try and help Eugenia as a friend after they saw her health deteriorate. They sanctioned an intervention which saw Eugenia involuntarily admitted into healthcare on the basis of an assessment by psychologists. In doing so, they had to lie to Eugenia in an effort to remove her from her home, so they could actually succeed in getting her help.
The conclusion was that the only thing that I could do was if I had her out of her house and into my apartment or into some other area where the mental health professionals could come and talk to her, and that I would legally be able to let them into my own place.
It's honestly hard to see many faults in what they had to say. If she had passed away, not only would they regret not doing anything, but they may have also faced criticism for allowing it to happen. Essentially, they made the decision to hurt Eugenia for her own good at the cost of the friendship with her, and this is what is missing from the video by Shane. What's more is that it paints other characters who, according to Jacqueline, Evangeline, and David, are sinister in their involvement with Eugenia's health deteriorating.
These are people looking for some form of gain and manipulation in a way that this video, the Shane video that came out today, completely glosses over the real problems and makes us completely worried that she's not okay.
Although they didn't say it, probably because they were being respectful, Shane had done a very bad job of this video, and it's symptomatic of the way he conducts his documentaries. The subject is the star, and the way the video is produced revolves around them looking good towards the end. He had essentially become a very good PR agent for bigger YouTubers, and the rewards of his coverage offered better standing in the community and a positive reception. By choosing what to omit, these videos can completely change the perception people have of these YouTubers. And in the end, that's a very dangerous form of manipulation. However, his work with Jeffree feels like it goes a bit further than just manipulating a positive reaction. Shane's first Jeffree Star series clearly paved the way for a closer friendship, but also helped Jeffree escape from the trap of his past actions. This legitimized him further and built a stronger support base for him to grow from. Before the latest series, the advertorial for a multi-million-dollar palette release, a very significant event happened and would drag Jeffree right back into the spotlight. May 2019. Everyone knows what happened. But what often gets overlooked is the manner in which it did. It exposed a deep, dark and rotten attitude within the beauty community, and exposed the lack of attention people had for the truth. In a community of people who play with makeup, trust no one because you don't know what's behind that layer of foundation. This is the story of Dramageddon. James Charles is our youngest character, a boy who made his break in 2016 and has been one of the most prominent members of the elite beauty YouTube scene for some time. In May of 2017, he hit 1 million subscribers. Less than 2 years later, he had 16 million. He has connections with both YouTube and mainstream personalities and has influence that crosses borders, causing the city of Birmingham to descend into chaos with the opening of a Morphe store. He is now a young man with the world literally at his fingertips. Tati Westbrook is the elder of the lot. She too is a beauty YouTuber, being accredited as one of the founders of the genre. She's a businesswoman too, the owner of her own nutrient brand Halo Beauty, selling multivitamins that range from growing luscious hair, as well as promoting clear thinking. Kind of ironic. She was also James's parental figure, taking him on board and guiding him through the ins and outs of the community, and being that person to give him advice that would help him grow as a person. In January of 2017, James did Tati's makeup for her wedding. In June, Tati featured in Jeffree Star's video showcasing his private jet and wealth. In March of 2018, Shane, his boyfriend Ryland and James would collaborate on an episode of Beauty Battles. In April, James and Jeffree featured in a Tana Mojo video. In May, James does Jeffree's makeup. In August, James and Shane did makeup in Jeffree's house in the second episode of Shane's series. In September, James featured on Tati's channel where she put her stepson in drag. In December, Jeffree was featured on James's channel. In January of 2019, James featured on Jeffree's channel. Then Tati and Jeffree featured in the now synonymous video on James's channel, the one that really drives home how deep this all went. I think you get the point. These people are well known to each other, so it wasn't some abstract expose. It was deep and emotionally damaging. Shane, Jeffree, Tati and James were all more than just acquaintances. They were all able to profit very well from knowing one another, and overall, they weren't some strangers on the internet calling one another out. This was real, and it all began at Coachella of 2019. On April the 22nd, halfway through the festival, James took to Instagram to promote a vitamin brand called Sugar Bear Hair, after they helped him with security issues he was experiencing at the festival since he is, a very popular person. However, unbeknown to James, this would cause him a bit of drama.
Everybody says what they need to say and uses who they need to use to get ahead, and I have had about enough. I've had about enough. It's not right.
In response, he dropped the paragraph apologizing for what had happened and reiterated that it was a non-commercial general shout-out for aid at the festival. He says he didn't think about the competition side of doing so, and he apologized and said he respects Tati and was seemingly apologetic. This is a somewhat unproblematic issue, but it's understandable why Tati would be a bit upset considering how close she and James are. But other than that, there is nothing to lose sleep over. Or so we thought.
So if you're going to go on the internet and cry and heavily imply that there's a horrible human being and everybody can get what it is, girl, sit on the internet and talk about it then.
Hey you guys, welcome to today's video. Obviously from the title you know that this is going to be intense, different, and this is absolutely not a video I ever thought in a million years that I would be making.
It is May the 10th and Tati Westbrook has dropped a nuclear bomb in the form of a 40-minute long expose named "Bye Sister," a play on James's catchphrase. Within, she would detail key issues she has with James and offers a reason for why she is distancing herself from him. So let's break down her main allegations. The main basis of this whole 40-minute video is basically the issue Tati had with James talking to Sugar Bear Hair and giving them a shout out when he was supposedly tied into a Halo Beauty brand. She emphasizes that this was simply a betrayal of her trust and she was very upset about it.
And you know, James Charles, he had 9 days after Coachella to talk to me.
She alleges that this was actually premeditated and that James had lied about his Coachella issues just so he could work with her competition.
The Sugar Bear Hair thing, that was a blatant lie. Like, come on. You went to Coachella, somehow had a security issue, and magically Sugar Bear Hair is there with a contract in hand to save the day for you and all of your friends.
It starts to become increasingly obvious that she was just annoyed because of the fact James had given this company one Instagram story shout out, and because of this, she was now second best to a competition. She's just very upset, you know?
You pair up with my #1 competitor, it's embarrassing to me. Is it gonna crush my business? No. But it's embarrassing.
Then, after this complaining and crying about James giving a one-off shout out to this other company, she promotes her vitamins.
My product is good enough on its own, and we're selling like hotcakes.
Vitamins. How controversial. The next accusation levied at James was that he valued his reputation more than the friendship with her. She came to this conclusion because James expected her to accept his apology. The first minute of this video emphasized how close they were and how much she had supported and vouched for him over the years, often repping his merch and pushing his affiliate codes. It set this video up for this idea of a betrayal.
I don't deal well with someone telling me that I need to accept an apology on their terms to fix their problems.
She takes this further by really pushing the idea that she and her husband made James who he was today.
So we helped him get into Style Hall back when basically no one wanted to work with him because of his Ebola scandal, and everyone was really afraid that he was very toxic, but once again, you know, we had his back.
This point was to somewhat justify her anger at James and give her an excuse as to why that one Instagram post really hurt her feelings. She felt betrayed, and this was her revenge. However, such a petty incident doesn't justify a 40-minute expose, so it needed some extra spice to make it seem somewhat necessary. Well, this is quite the shift in tone, and is also a very, very serious allegation that Tati was now making. She claims James had used the power of his influence to essentially prey on straight men, and forced them into questioning their sexuality or be ruined for not complying.
Oh my god, you tried to trick a straight man into thinking he's gay yet again, and somehow you're the victim.
She then chastised him for making jokes about liking straight men and suggesting there was no such thing as a straight man.
And how dare you laugh about it and make meme after meme and retweet and this and that and I love straight boys, and make it a joke. Because this behavior is not normal, it's not okay. Cracking someone's sexuality is not an escape room.
She then goes on to claim that he was inappropriate on her birthday, saying he was discussing what he would do to the waiter who was serving their table.
Oh my god. Time and place. And you did it at my birthday dinner. And I made excuses for you then. You were talking in detail about things you wanted to do to the waiter. And when I said, James, he's straight, your response was, doesn't matter, I'm a celebrity. So freaking gross. And you said that in front of my family, in front of my childhood friends. I had to call every one of them up the next morning and apologize on your behalf because it was so uncomfortable.
So after fussing about James promoting a rival vitamin brand once, she drops allegations of sexual predation and abuse of power that she probably should have led with if she wanted to warn people about him. The video was also sprinkled with other interesting moments, such as this brilliant bit of self-incrimination towards the start, the good old, I've had enough.
At this point that I have to, because Gabriel Zamora decided to drag me out on the dance floor by calling me out by name.
She also mentions that people had speculated Shane was involved in the planning of the video and claims it wasn't true.
I can't help but think that James Charles felt like that was somehow like some sneaky thing that happened because his ego is so big that he will think that everything is about him.
And she of course emphasized this was not about the money.
This is not about money. At all. Like, at all.
Even though this all started because of their vitamins, which makes their money. Yeah, it's all starting to fall into place. Although very questionable now, at the time this gained traction very quickly, prompting James to respond very, very poorly.
Hi all, James here. I'm currently traveling abroad and just woke up, but I wanted to sit down and make a video addressing everything that's going on right now, because I owe everybody an explanation. But most importantly, I owe two important people an apology.
At the time, he was down under to meet fans, but that was cut short thanks to this situation. His response consisted of apologizing to Tati and saying he wasn't going to clap back. He also dodged the allegations of sexual misconduct, which somewhat amplified the allegations thanks to the good old Streisand effect. Cheers, Bob. The result of this was a net loss of 2.5 million subscribers in just 3 days. I'll talk about damage. To add insult to injury, 2 days after the initial blow, Jeffree Star came out on Twitter and branded James a danger to society. Then he also proceeded to ask James's brother why he was a predator. All in public. Although in part 1 we clearly emphasized that a year and a half prior, Jeffree promised to change the way he acted online. I see absolutely no growth. Here's what he had to say.
Now, I stand by everything I said. I want to start off by saying that. But I do regret, and I don't say that often, but I do regret sending out that tweet. Things on my end could have been handled behind closed doors, 100%.
The only evidence Jeffree had was hearsay, and he used the fact that another person he was close with also had circumstantially similar allegations, albeit still hearsay. A lot of what Jeffree comes to accuse people of is often unsubstantiated rumors or claims, and he rarely backs it up with actual evidence to support them. We will explore this more in the next video, but we still have quite a way to go. The major problem with Jeffree's statements on Twitter is that it validated a lot of nefarious claims being made by some very shady Twitter accounts. At the time, there were a few somewhat viral tweets echoing the idea that James was a predator. Jeffree's role was minimal, but his influence elevated his claims and made them one of the hot topics being thrown around. Jeffree has authority, and no one questioned it, which is why he's one of the key figures in this story. His motivation? Supposedly, to help James grow. 7 days later, Tati followed up and revealed her motive for dropping a nuclear bomb on one of her close friends. She went ahead and thanked the community for supporting her through this very hard ordeal and urged them to not take a side and cease the abuse and memes. Just a side note, the lack of awareness shown by these privileged people when it comes to public reaction is mind-blowing. She literally makes a living from being a public figure and doesn't understand how people are going to react when she claims one of the biggest beauty YouTubers has done predatory things and abused his power. This is why commentary thrives. People like this. Anyways, she goes further to justify what she did by claiming it was for the good of James, because no one around him was keeping him in check. This public character assassination was apparently her last-ditch attempt to get the message across. However, she feels as if the end result isn't what she wanted, and she somewhat regrets the backlash James was facing. She claims her words were twisted and that nobody deserves this. But again, what did she expect? Probably not a 40-minute long counter video to her expose just a day later.
1 week ago, I uploaded a video to my YouTube channel titled Tati. This video was a direct response to the video that Tati Westbrook uploaded to her channel titled By Sister. Before I say anything at all in this video, I want to make it very, very clear that everything I said in that video in regards to my sentiments towards Tati and my apology, I stand behind 100% and still reign true.
This video set out to essentially correct the record and completely shift the direction of the entire story. For the first 10 or so minutes, discuss the vitamin saga, of which was the main focus of Tati's entire video. And then he went into the allegations that he had abused his power to get what he wanted from men, with a keen focus on pointing out Jeffree's subtle role in this entire drama. Then, to finish off, James follows up the video with 2 tweets saying he made the video to take responsibility for his actions and clear his name, that people should appreciate what you have and those around you, finishing with, "Love you all." Cue the meltdown. Tati tweeted saying that she was taking a break and that she was told by family about James's video, of which was littered with lies and half-truths. She stands by her videos and tells James to not twist my words into what they are not. Hear the message. Some replies to this tweet are actually quite interesting. Justin Wang went with a good old image response, likening her to the monorail salesman from the episode of The Simpsons, where Springfield gets the half-assed monorail and he skips town well loaded. Ricky Berwick does a Ricky Berwick.
Right now would be a bad time to take a break, honey. You should fucking make a response, stick up for yourself, or tell the truth!
And an interesting one from T-Spill. Jeffree took to Snapchat yet again to vent his frustrations, saying that James was actually lying about him and painting him in a different way. He then threatens to release new information that may again twist this entire situation.
Myself, and I am going to collect my thoughts. I'm going to really think deep about what I want to say, because there's a lot to say, and I don't want to throw anything to the fire, but there are so many things that you guys don't know. And you know me. If you've been following me for a long time, bitch, I am not a liar. All I know is honesty, and I am hurt right now, and I'm sad.
In deleted tweets, he says, "Everyone keeps asking me for my receipts. When I show you the proof, you'll all finally understand. Remember, there are two sides to every story." On the 20th of May, the saga draws to a conclusion. Tati took to Twitter with a statement saying she was ending the drama for the good of the community and was putting a stop to the never-ending bloodshed by setting aside my overwhelming need to be understood. Lame. She claims that this conclusion was achieved after contact with James through an intermediary, which is quite interesting. It could have possibly been YouTube telling them to shut up, as a similar thing happened to H3 and Keemstar earlier this year when they had their utterly pointless feud. Because, in all honesty, the way these mega influencers were using the platform was an absolute embarrassment for Susan and co. Anyways, 2 days later, she takes to Twitter again and releases some half-assed sob story. We don't care. You did this for fucking vitamins. Stupid, pointless, and petty drama. Now, at the same time all of this was happening, Shane and Jeffree were in the process of creating their own makeup collection and recording it for their next docu-series. The one we aptly described as nothing but a cash grab and a way of milking a community fooled by the theatrics of the two men. This singular point in time was coming, however, and it was set in motion when they embarked on their first collaboration. The events of May 2019 are known as Dramageddon, but it's also often referred to as the second such event. This is because the year prior, a scandal involving Jeffree had yet again caused such a noise in the beauty community that it shook everyone up. But this was more of a prologue for what was to come, as the extreme shortcomings of Laura Lee, Manny MUA, Nikita Dragon and Gabriel Zamora left Jeffree with a major victory. So we've talked about how Shane somewhat saved Jeffree's reputation with the first series and following collaborations, but it isn't entirely accurate because it's what happened after that really solidified his status. After the first series concluded, it was a smashing success for the pair. Shane's reputation for filmmaking was only bolstered and Jeffree was allowed to truly show the side he wanted people to see. It worked very, very well and is probably a core reason as to why Jeffree managed to completely destroy the 4 creators mentioned, and honestly, he didn't even have to do much. But this all starts thanks to the calamitous end of 2017. In short, all 4 creators had a falling out with Jeffree, and this eventually boiled down to a very public feud after he referenced them in the docu-series.
Half the people still think I'm the bad guy when I only loved and cared about all these people and boosted them up and gave them all my connections, and I'm still the fucking bad guy. And it's like, how? How do you even trust the next friend?
They posted a photo together with a caption aimed square at Jeffree. Then they followed up with tweets commenting on Jeffree's historical and allegedly current racism. All fun and games, they thought they'd won, except this is the internet and you can never hide your past. In a very shocking turn of events, fans of Jeffree used Twitter's advanced search function to find tweets of them all being racist. Bionic Pig should take note. And this pretty much backfired on them. Laura Lee made the worst apology video of the decade, and the others kind of just ate each other alive. Jeffree was untouched, no doubt in part to his newfound clean slate, thanks to Shane's propagandist PR series. The world is truly cruel. But again, this is a common theme with Jeffree, and it set him up to go again just under a year later. Over the years, he has constantly had feuds with people he used to be close to. In the early days, he had falling outs with Hannah Beth. Then he had a nuclear meltdown over Kat Von D. Now it was 4 creators in one fell swoop. It raises the question of whether he's a bad judge of character, or maybe he's just the problem. When Dramageddon came knocking on everyone's sub box, this might just be the answer. What can be said about the breakup with James Charles is that it was done so poorly that it raised big question marks over Jeffree as a character. He had a good public standing, this helped fuel his claims, but it also let him off when he had no end result and backed away from his allegations entirely. He painted James as quite literally a danger to society, reminiscent of Darby Vanity, the predator he called out and then later went back to work with. There was no intent to hold James to whatever he had against him. There was no conviction in his actions. And it's baffling how he managed to get away with the most mediocre apology video when people started to pressure him for an answer.
For hours yesterday, it took me back to the old Jeffree, and I was in a very dark place. And we fully understand the power of millions of people watching and what my voice and what this channel actually means to me. And what it means is that I don't want to play the games anymore. I'm willing to bite the bullet and let anyone think what they want. But today I will not be posting voice memos. I will not be posting text messages. I will not be exposing anything more. This has to stop. For years, I have let others and their opinions somehow get to me. So moving forward, I want to handle things way differently than I have in the past. Did I jump the gun on a situation that I didn't fully understand and chime in? Absolutely, and I am living with that every day. There's a lot of questions about my tweets, and I want to say that I regret them. I don't regret much in my life, but I regret hitting the send button because they were bigger and louder than I ever imagined. So I don't want my character to ever be misconstrued. And I do want to come clean and say that I do regret sending those tweets. Before fully accusing an individual of doing anything, I need more facts.
Essentially, Jeffree has receipts for what he claims to have against James, but because the story was now shifting, he decided to pull out and handle it behind the scenes. By his own admission then, James could not be a danger to society, as I would very much argue the public needs to know when someone is sus. Instead, he claims the old Jeffree had re-emerged, and that was a reason as to why he made all of the statements he did. It's a very weak cop-out, and it's a claim he's made before, and I don't see how he got away with his part in this whole situation so effortlessly, and people ultimately forgave him. I think people kind of just expected Jeffree to have some sort of input into the drama, but this took away from the very serious allegations he had made, and no one held him to his end of the bargain.
I am done with the tea, with the drama, and I don't want to be involved in anyone's situations anymore. This was a huge wake-up call to reel me in because I have been really healing myself. I'm in such a good place. So for me to digress and go back to Jeffree from years ago, I'm embarrassed of myself.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Jeffree. So during all this, Shane was recording, right? He was in the process of developing the series whilst Jeffree developed the products that would make them a shitload of money. I feel like Shane tried to make the series a way of looking behind the scenes of the cosmetics industry, but he chose the wrong person to do that with because it just comes across as more promotional than informative. It's really just some clueless rich dude talking and reacting to whatever the extremely rich dude says. It's actually pretty boring. They needed some drama to make it intriguing, and that's very evident throughout. They also needed drama to sell the series, and the trailer included one very particular incident that got everyone excited. Dramageddon was teased, but it wasn't until the final episode that we actually got an answer. And it was only because drama channels had made noise about the lack of inclusion. There was complete silence when it came to the biggest thing that happened in that year. And so it came at the end. 8 minutes of the video was given to this, and most of it was Shane reacting in an overly dramatic and hysterical way. The drama channels were used to invite suspense, but it ultimately failed to deliver any actual answer to the overarching issue. It's as if millions waited for the moment, but then were let down by the complete lack of coverage. They wanted an actual reaction to this massive event, but all they got was lax commentary and a short, repetitive Jeffree Star statement. I think this is the big problem I personally had with Shane's series, not the fact that they clearly sought to make themselves a load of money, but it's this disregard for the whole YouTube community that just stands out. It's essentially lying to everyone and manipulating an entire sub-community to sell a product. What's worse is that they use the suffering of someone else to promote this series, then don't make an effort to explore how and why people involved did what they did. It just makes the beauty community look more like a group of snakes than it already was, and from a third-party perspective, that's rather disappointing. The theme here is that once again, Shane has utilized his platform to bolster someone's image and reputation to protect them from severe public scrutiny and backlash. He essentially let Jeffree go because he chose money over integrity and aided the manipulation of millions of willing consumers. His influence warped the perspective many had about Jeffree, likewise all his friends, and as far as I'm concerned, that is just as bad as partaking in what Jeffree had done. Shane might just be a nice and caring friend, but the difference here was business, and afterwards, he was pretty much financially set for a very long time. It could be greed, but it could also be his character. But he's not alone, and the problem runs deep through the beauty community. There is a systemic issue within that breeds nothing but toxicity, and the entire community feeds on any and all drama, which has allowed some to become profiteers of major scandals. As much as it is easy to point fingers at the perpetrators of the big issues in these communities, it's much less easy to diagnose the other bad actors lurking in the shadows. Not all drama-oriented channels, nor tea channels, are inherently bad, but it's trying to understand the good from the bad rather than the most popular that strikes an issue. The third party that fuels every incident is the person who acts as the source of news for many who are invested in this type of gossip. However, what's the purpose of news if it's just designed to fuel and encourage the degradation of the lives of those who just want to vibe? What about the other side of this community that just wants to be viewed as a good faith person and not be represented by those problematic few at the top? Overall, this space is a mess, an undesirable muddle of lies, deception, and manipulation. For now, Shane enabled a monster and fell into the grasps of the darkness that casts over those who seek to entertain. Jeffree was caught red-handed and yet again managed to slither away out of any responsibility. They fooled everyone and they got away with it, but that wouldn't last long. As for those who stood by, helping fuel the smear against James Charles, they themselves need to answer the call for accountability.
I'm helpful to my best friends, especially the ones that were with me in Australia, that kept me from making a really, really dangerous, irreversible choice that I would not have been able to take back. Because if it weren't for them, I would not be alive today.
With James Charles, watching his content kind of made me uncomfortable, and that's when you know, where you're just like, oh, I don't feel right watching this.
And now I can say with confidence that the hunch I had about him, I think was right.
Hold him accountable to what he's actually done, pressuring straight people into doing stuff.
You shouldn't have this much free time to snap at 15-year-olds on Twitter. Like, do you not have anything better to do with your life?